Hey guys, we are back. Welcome to episode 2, and we are the Gut Girls. I am Angela, and Diana is here joining me. Diana, do you want to say hi?
Hey guys, how are y'all?
We are so excited. We had so much just to talk about in episode 1 of how we came about and how we're now the Gut Girls. But we promised you we were going to dive in more to Dinah's story. So this is Dinah's story part 1. And I kind of just want to piggyback of where we left off. We have our Optimize Your Gut program. We have our membership. But something that really stuck with me, Diana, since that last episode is this mentioning of this ongoing need for support in your health journey. Because if you think about it, a lot of it is not just the like, hey, take this supplement, you know what I mean, or eat this food. It's the mental journey, because you're going up against a culture where health is ever changing right now, right? I mean, we are past what we would have thought was one of the biggest transitions in health, which was the COVID pandemic. You know what I mean? Like, we're in 2025 now. Like, we've seen the definition of health kind of change over the years for so many people, right? And so it's that mental. I think what is so awesome about what we offer as the Gut Girls is just this ability to reach out to someone and be like, you're not crazy. What you're feeling it's your body's voice, and we need to listen to it, but we need to learn it, and not just being told that, like, I don't know what to do with that. You know what I mean? So this is like the Gut Girls is this ability to have a safe place to talk about your health and not necessarily be judged, but become curious, right? And so if I go back to your story, there was like this kind of unlearning. We kind of touched again upon it in episode 1, where you were like, I never knew, about nutrition. And so you kind of had to unlearn, in a sense, some of the things that you thought defined your health, and relearn stuff. And we're going to talk about how that kind of shaped like some of the things you did throughout the years of growing up that you kind of look back now and you're like, why did I do that? Because you know different. So when you know different, you do different, right?
Yeah.
And so let's just jump back to your earliest memory of when your mom was sick. And like, how did that shape your view of health? So like the early years of your view of health, what was that like?
All I ever knew was going to the doctor, getting medications, chemotherapies, radiations. My mom had breast cancer. She was first diagnosed when she was 31. I was 6 at the time. And so that's what I knew was the answer, right? Is to just go to the doctor and they're going to fix my mom. There was no talk about like nutrition. There was no talk about like supporting your body or, making sure you had adequate, vitamin D or whatever. It was just that you go from doctor's appointment and scan to doctor's appointment to scan. I mean, that's all I had ever really known.
It's interesting, because that makes me feel like, a sense of crossing your fingers. Yeah. Right? Like, I get that feeling of like, you kind of went to every appointment just crossing your fingers of like, I hope the next scan is better.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's what it felt like, is living from one scan to the next. Now, when I was 6, I didn't really know, what was going on. My mom taught school, so I knew that she left every day from school. She taught school all day long, and then she would leave at like 2:30, and she would go and get radiation every day in Nashville. So she had to drive an hour and a half there. So I just remember I was never with my parents. I felt like I was always just being hopped from one friend to the next. And, during that season, when I was 6, so kindergarten, first grade, something like that. That's what I remember. Like, who am I going home with today? Like, who am I spending the night with tonight? So that's all I really remember, is like kind of that doctor's appointment or whatever. That's the earliest childhood memories of that.
I'm just curious, actually. Were you ever let in on your mom's own emotional journey while she was going through that?
Oh, no. No. And, you know, my mom, um, forgive me if I get emotional, but if you well, that was in 1992 when she was first diagnosed. And then, so if you fast forward to like when I was in high school and she and I were having conversations and stuff about it, the shift of what happened, and I probably need to kind of like refresh, like tell everybody, actually, you know, she was diagnosed with breast cancer when she was 31. I mean, talk about a picture of health. My mom, if you ask anybody, they're like, what do you remember about Kate Bratcher? I remember that she was a school teacher and she's everybody's favorite teacher. She was like that teacher, you know. And if she wasn't doing that, she was doing something with her kids. She was coaching her kids. And if she wasn't doing that, she was running 3 miles every day. I mean, every day she got her 3 miles in. So she was very healthy, right? I mean, you know, she wasn't overweight, and, you know, I remember her eating salads and, you know, like, I mean, just, she was a great mom, you know? And so, that's what I remember about her. So, but I remember like later when she went into remission for years and years. And then I remember later her talking about the fact that, that in 1992, it wasn't culturally or socially accepted to be able to like have a mastectomy, to like, and you didn't share that you had breast cancer because it was embarrassing, you know, to talk about breasts and breast cancers and those kind of things. So it wasn't like okay to talk about it. You almost kept it a little bit secretive. Later, you know, in 2021, something like that, like in the early 2000s, she was really open about it, actually. And I mean, I can tell you some perfect mom stories. Like when I was in college, she came to visit me and she brought this boob, and it had a little spot that was like a cancerous spot so that you could learn to like feel what it felt like or whatever. So she went from like being in hiding to like, and then the boob, we would hide it in the microwave, and, you know, so like, it was in the freezer. So me and my college friends, like, you know, we would just find the boob anywhere. But
Oh my God, I love that. I love that.
but that's, I mean, so I specifically remember her, and of course, you know, she died years and years ago now, and so it's hard to remember some of those kind of conversations, but that one sticks out in my mind, that it was not okay to like talk about her breast cancer. It was almost like a secret. It was almost embarrassing a little bit, which makes me sad. But then also just the lack of knowledge of like what to do. There weren't that many options at that time.
Wow, I have to stop there for a minute then and just like reflect with you on that, of how sickness, even in that time, was like, yeah, you didn't talk about it. Like it was almost like, it makes me imagine that I don't know, because I didn't talk to your mom, but it would make me imagine that she felt like something is wrong with me and it's not okay. And can you imagine then what that does? So like in the Gut Girls, we are so like, it's so important to talk about your health and even the negatives about it, because we want to make it as normal. Like we live in an unhealthy world, like breast cancer, colon cancer, disease, it's everywhere. We even say that, Diana, not to like take a little bit of a rabbit hole, but just to reflect on what you just said, because it's powerful. When we find parasites on a stool test, how many times have you talked to someone and they're like, oh, I feel so dirty that you're telling me this? And I'm like, no, in fact, we live in a world full of bugs. Like this is normal. Parasites are normal. It's just learning about the relationship that you're supposed to have with them. And so I can't imagine going back to your mom of feeling that way. Like that had to affect her ability to heal, honestly. Like, because it's almost like, man, I can't even express to other people what is wrong with me and talk about like my option of maybe I have to get this, you know, done, this mistake. Like, man, that's kind of heavy, isn't it?
It is. It really wasn't even an option. I mean, I where they would do like a mastectomy or, you know, something like that. So that's the best I remember about that.
Mhm.
But yeah, it is kind of wild that it was almost like a secret. And now, we have things like Instagram where people post their whole stories, and it's like, I mean, they tell from the very beginning, and sometimes show you, or whatever. And it's totally different. I mean, my mom would have never done that, in 1992. Of course, we didn't have the resources and stuff to do so, but it's amazing how things change so much. But yeah, people are a lot more open. And I mean, this is literally what the Gut Girls podcast is us being open about these things, right? And like what's going on with our bodies and, our family's bodies or whatever. So,
yeah. So we kind of talked about what you experienced with your mom. And then while you were, young, you were 6, right? You said, what did normal look like for you, Diana? We know what was going on with your mom at the time and how you didn't necessarily feel, you were kind of just like, they had appointments, like your mom was constantly taking care of her health. But what was normal for you in health? Like you had mentioned to me when we talked about like purple drinks and like, what was normal for you in health and wellness?
yeah. Well, it's funny. A lot of people ask me like if I drink sweet tea, like what do you do instead of drinking sweet tea now? And I'm like, I've never had sweet tea. That wasn't a thing for my family. My parents were like, we need water, but it wasn't water that we were drinking. We would open up this like purple packet. Who knows? I meant to look up the ingredients and see what it is in those purple packets, but we would buy the gallon water jugs and then we'd open up these purple packets and shake it up. And that's what we drank all the time. I mean, I put it in my, to go play soccer or whatever. So it was just what was convenient. What we could drink on the go or eat on the go or whatever. My mom, I would say she didn't eat much. And so, I mean, I wasn't like a huge snacker, like constant snacker, but I just ate, a Dairy Queen. I mean, I kind of ate whoever had me, my mom's best friends. I spent a lot of time with them. So I just learned to kind of go along with the flow a little bit during that time, at least. But we did have, there were years and years of remission for my mom where we had what I would call kind of a normal life more, where she coached my sports. I mean, she was back running again. In fact, when the cancer eventually came back, she was running and broke a rib. And that's how they found that the cancer had spread. And so, we lived, I played every sport. My brother played every sport. My parents they both worked, but they, took us from one sport to the next. And then we meet at Dairy Queen, for dinner. A lot of our dinners, if we didn't eat at Dairy Queen, because that was kind of like where, between the softball field and the baseball field, that's where it was. That's where it was the best for us to meet. Because of course we didn't have cell phones, So we're like, we'll meet at Dairy Queen at 8:30, on a Tuesday night after baseball practice. And so then if it wasn't that, it was, if we were eating healthy for the night, then it was like a bag of like those Tyson chicken patties. And so we would eat those, like my mom, they would be frozen. And so we'd eat those. And then my mom would open up a can of green beans because she knew we needed to eat something green. So she'd open up a can of green beans and throw that into a pan, a pot or whatever, heat them up. And that would kind of be what our dinner was. So, it was kind of the idea of like, we need to have some green, we need to have some vegetables, but I didn't ever eat, a sweet potato or whatever. I would say, in general, we're like very picky eaters as growing up. Both my mom and my dad really, there wasn't a whole lot of like substance to it,
Yeah. So was that like more was food based around taste and convenience and hey, I just know we need a green so nutrition back then sounds like it was based off of maybe that
it was more
versus
convenience. I definitely would say it was based off convenience. A little bit of like, oh, we need chicken and, whatever. But for the most part, it was mostly about convenience. Like I said, we're not huge snackers. Like my dad and mom, neither one, I don't remember like having like tons of snacks and stuff. It was mostly like, we need to eat dinner. So this is the closest thing we can get to like a healthy meal.
So it's interesting because like I'm literally taking myself back into like where you were. And so it's like there really wasn't much talk about ingredients at that point. It was convenience based. And then if there was a food label, we've talked about this. It was what I remember too, and you have stated this to me. It's like the label might have said fat free. And so tell me what that kind of said to you as a young girl. Like what was food all about then for you?
Well, I think that it was more about weight. My mom, wanted to kind of stay a certain weight. And like I said, she was running and teaching school and whatever. So, I mean, she wanted her clothes to fit a certain way. She wanted to, feel her best. And so I would say it was more about weight. I remember like some of the South Beach diets and Atkins diets and some of those things, like that's when those books came out. And I can remember reading and like learning about that. And so I did learn about like what a carbohydrate was at an early age. And so I would not eat carbohydrates. And so I just adopted the same thing, even though I didn't need the same type of meal as what my parents did, because I mean, heck, I was playing basketball and soccer and, cheerleading and gymnastics. I mean, I was doing everything. So I needed to nourish my body probably more than what they did. So like, but we didn't know that I needed those good, healthy carbs, right? So, I mean, I would play a basketball game and I can remember feeling exhausted. I mean, just like I could not run up and I was a point guard, right? So you're supposed to be everywhere. And I could not run up and down. And this was in high school. I couldn't run up and down the court because I had no energy. I mean, I was eating like a turkey roll up and like a string cheese because I was in the middle of my no carb part, and then we'd like have these days where we would binge because it was like you get this one cheat day or, you get like a 2-hour window or I can't even remember what it was, but I remember what we ate during those times because I was like, yes, like tonight is brownie night with ice cream on top and chocolate syrup. And so I was like, yes, like I go from, eating my turkey wrap, trying to like play basketball and then the next morning have another type of sporting event or whatever, but I definitely remember it mostly during basketball feeling like I literally had no energy.
So this is so interesting to me. Like I cringe from hearing this because I have two young daughters too, and I'm like, man, your blood sugar. And then I go to like your hormones. Like, oh my gosh, do I feel for you knowing where I am in my life right now as a younger, like your younger version of yourself, man, Diana, my body itches for that, like young Diana, just imagining. And so, guys, let me like bring you to like where we're at mentally of like, so Diana, you're saying food was convenience. There was like labeling as far as fat free. So like your view of food was like it will play a role in my weight, but really it's we're eating what's convenient. And then I noticed that I was tired and I couldn't maybe keep up, but I didn't connect any dots there necessarily. Like you were craving, I hear you saying like I was craving the brownies and sweets because your body, like what I hear is like, man, Danny, your body was screaming at you at that point in time. The fact that you looked forward, I mean, all kids look forward to some sugar, right? But I mean, you were craving that because your body was so depleted. And guys, that's what happens is like when you are that depleted, you don't really have control over your cravings. It's not a matter of willpower. It is a matter at that point of your body is literally feeding and surviving off of like that level of food. And so that's all your body knows, right? And so I'm interested to know, like, did anyone around you know that like that was a red flag? Like, did anyone at that point in your life be like, Diana, you're not keeping up in the sports? Like, did anyone ever mention these like I'm seeing them all. Talking to you,
Yeah.
like your blood sugar, your hormones, your fatigue. These are red flags to me. But at that time, did anyone ever say that to you?
No, I mean, because I was still able to, run and jump and play and do all the things. It's just that's when I became more aware of it. When I was in high school, I remember thinking that it wasn't until college really that I had somebody that literally was like, okay, Diana, so what are we eating this week? Like, what do we get to eat today? And like, she'd say, do we get to go to the cafeteria or whatever in college? And I'm like, nope, just eating a turkey stick and a cheese, or a turkey roll up and a cheese stick today. And she's like, oh, like, so it was almost, I mean, she thought it was weird, like, what I was doing. I was like flip-flopping back and forth. And then of course, and then the next day I would go and eat a Chick-fil-A sandwich because that's when they had Chick-fil-A that came to the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. So everybody was like, yes, Chick-fil-A. So I was like, one day I'd eat a turkey stick and then the next day I'd eat Chick-fil-A sandwich and fries. So she was always like, which one? And I remember her being like, this is so weird. Why do you do that? Like you don't even feel good.
Yeah, so she was probably watching you, but really couldn't even put it into like words or a conversation to go
Yeah.
deeper with you at that point.
Yeah.
So you were in college. Okay, so we're kind of catching up. You're in college, and your mom, think I remember you saying your mom's cancer came back when you were in college, right?
So mom's cancer actually came back when I was in high school.
Mhm.
So when I was in, I guess maybe when I was a sophomore in high school, that's when my mom was running. She was running on the treadmill and one of her ribs broke. And so they did a scan, showed that that was the broken rib, but then they found cancer sort of everywhere at that point. And then that's when I was like, of course, they actually told her, and then so that was in 2001, and then it recurred like right away again, and it spread even more, even though she was in the middle of doing treatment. So then she ended up getting a double mastectomy because not only was it I'm sorry, let me back up. She had the double mastectomy first because it came back in the breast first. So she had the double mastectomy, but then a year later, she was back running again. And then she broke the rib. And then that's when they were like, it spread or whatever. And so then I guess it was maybe in January of 2003, they gave her maybe 6 months to live. And because I was about to graduate from high school then, and we didn't know if she was going to make it to my high school graduation at that point. And so I was struggling big time. I mean, I was stressed, trying to figure out where I wanted to go to college. Like, did I want to stay home and go to a community college? Because I didn't want to miss out on, being there for her. And, but my brother was already going to UT Knoxville. So my whole family kind of collectively was like, go to UT, y'all can be there together or whatever. And so that's when I was like, all right, I can do this. Like I can be 3 hours away from her. I didn't want to do that, but that's when I decided to go there. So then her cancer while I was in college, it kind of continually got worse. There was always a phone, like you just always dreaded that phone call of like, where did it spread next? Like where was it? And I still remember exactly where I was walking home when she called and said that there was a baseball sized tumor on her spine. And she ended up, so when I was home for Christmas, my sophomore year of college, when I was home for Christmas, the surgeon did a 12-hour surgery on her. He never went to the bathroom, not one time, the whole time, apparently. He did, I want to say about 5 or 6 hours on one side, and then they flipped her over, and then they had to do 5 or 6 hours on the other side to try to get the majority of that one, because that was the one, it was causing her so much pain all the way down into her arm and into her hand and stuff. And of course, all throughout. I mean, it was just, so they were trying to relieve that pain. So that was when I was in college. And again, eating my turkey and cheese sticks and trying to make good grades and drive back and forth like to and from home and all that stuff. So it was a pretty stressful time.
Well, that's what I kind of want to touch upon is, I feel like I'm kind of playing the role of your body as you're talking. I mean, everyone listening hears the emotion and I hear it. It's heavy. But I'm kind of playing the role of Dana's body. And I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that you went through your younger years as a child, pushing yourself in sports and not really nourishing, blood sugar roller coaster, probably a hormonal roller coaster. And then you get this bomb of life, like just dropped upon you in your college years, and what that had to do to what was already going on. Right. So I think that that's where my head goes in, like, in college, what at that point, I'm going back to the red flags. Were you still kind of just like ignorant to the body, like your body signs at that point?
It was still always just, what's the doctor going to say next? And I totally dismissed anything that would go on with myself. I mean, because it was just always about my mom, which, I mean, she wasn't a selfish person at all, but it was just like, what is the next doctor going to say, or whatever. So I just dismissed anything. I knew that I needed to keep exercising, but I gained freshman 15, because I was stressed out. And I continued to kind of gain a little bit of weight all throughout college, really. And just because I didn't know how to support my body, I just didn't know I didn't know what it was meant to be healthy. I just knew what it meant to try to keep my weight down as much as I could, And
Well,
so
and
that's why I would like cut carbs.
yeah, and this will touch so many people. I love your story for so many reasons, because there's so many of our clients that I've like, even we're in episode 2, guys, and I'm sure that you will find yourself relatable to Diana at some point in her story. So right now, and just to like recap, like the first one was that individual who just feels so dismissed, right? And like hopeless, and there's no answers. We don't know what to do. And then now to the person that we see so often, that is the caregiver. In a sense, like your priority was on the call of the doctor for your mom and where her journey was going. That it sounds like to me that like your relationship with your body in the college years was kind of just neglectful. Like if it was screaming at you, you probably didn't even hear it. And that is the caregiver. That's the story we hear so often. People like, they're like, I'm taking care of my mom right now, who's elderly, and yet I'm falling apart. And we have to remind them as the gut girls, like, we want obviously for you to care for that loved one, but you are dismissing every sign. And when we start telling them like, this is your body trying to tell you something, it's like, wow, I ignored that voice because I had a bigger priority. And it sounds like that was you in college. Like you just kind of ignored it. You kept going on with like just maintaining a weight, eating my cheese sticks, like caring for my mom. Like, am I right to say that?
Yeah. And I mean, I would say when you say caregiver, I mean, my mind kind of flashes all over the place, because sometimes I feel like this is one of those things that, I don't know, like God's almost called me to be a caregiver. Because one thing that I haven't even really shared with you is when, during my mom's time of remission, when I was in 7th grade, my grandfather was in a car accident that left him handicapped. And so he had to come live with us. And so I cared for him. Even my high school teachers knew that, like, if my dad was with my mom at an appointment, that it was like, okay, that I just left in the middle of class to, my classmates knew, that that was my responsibility, to have to come home and, feed him. And, as hard as it is to kind of talk about now, like, a lot of caring for him was like bowel movements and things. He would have to take laxatives and things, and he would literally go like all over the bathroom, all over the floor, not just the bathroom, but all throughout the house, because he would try to like walk back to his bathroom and it would literally just like follow him in a trail. And I remember one specific time that my brother was in school. I was still at UT. I was in high school, and my mom and my dad were getting my mom treatment, which is about an hour and a half away. And my grandfather had had an accident. So, cleaning that up is something you never forget. And that's kind of what my life was from seventh grade until all the way really until I went to until college, and even all the way until he passed away. You're just kind of a caregiver. There were different times of life that I lived with him or didn't live with him or whatever, but it was just part of my responsibility that I cared for him. So people ask me about cooking and doing things like that now. And I'm like, I never was taught to cook. We always were just winging it. It was either me running to get something or, the best I ever ate was because my mom was sick for so many years. Like people would bring us stuff, so if they'd bring us lasagnas or like casseroles, and we're like, man, this is good food, because me and my dad and my brother would just make it work. And, my mom didn't eat much. And so we just kind of got by, that it was definitely not a focus to for me to have optimal health. I just was always kind of focused on everybody else, I guess.
Wow. That sits with me so heavy. Your heart is amazing. But I think to realize too, of where you were in your journey at the time, if you could go back to that girl that was cleaning up and caring for other people, knowing which is where we're going to jump to in a minute, of what was about to come for you in your health, and what became the turning point. What would you say to that girl where she was in her health at that time?
Man, I would say just wait. God has a big plan for you. Just hold on for the ride, and you're strong. You can get through it. And I did. Looking back, I even was telling my best friend the other day about Todd and his diagnosis and just some other things that are kind of going on in life. And she was like, you're not even 40 years old yet, and you have been through more than most people do in a lifetime, just in sort of an emotional roller coaster. And, with my health, but with my mom's health and my grandfather, and just, family struggles and all kinds of different things. Obviously the death of my mom, it's just been a lot. And, so I would tell that girl, God has a bigger plan for you. And so just hang on. And honestly, I'm a gut girl right now, and I feel like I have it somewhat figured out, but we don't, do we? We talk about all the time that we're just following along. Right. And so that's what I would tell my younger self.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I have so many goosebumps because I'm just like, man, I love that for your younger version of yourself, and for other people listening, just giving them that hope. You didn't know at the time, but in retrospect, and we almost say that so often in our teachings as gut girls, of what would that older version of yourself say to you? When you're making these decisions right now, what would that older version of yourself say to you? And you want that older version to be able to be like, you fought for me, right? And so that brings me to, there was this turning point, and we kind of discussed it briefly, where you had, so you got married. We're kind of jumping a little bit, but you had got married and had kids. And in episode 1, if you didn't hear, you can kind of go back. But that was kind of when, am I right to say, the real turning point for you then, to where you knew, okay, my health is now an issue? I didn't know that version that you, that we just talked about, you were taking care of everyone else, but then it switched to where at one point, after kids, you were like, now my body, something is wrong. And was it scary for you seeing what your mom had gone through and not knowing what was wrong with your body? And just bring me up to date right there.
Yeah. So Todd and I did get married, right after college. And then we ended up having, actually had struggled getting pregnant because I was trying to do that while my mom was literally dying. And but yeah, so it was really, that's the first time that I ever remember actually caring for my body and like trying to figure out and look for what can actually nourish my body and help me. And like, but it's not even that, it's like the stress. I never knew how to actually handle the stress. So my guess is that my body was like just literally constantly stressed out. And you know, I'm not going to say that I just live this like worry free, carefree life, but now I know how to handle the stress a lot better. Um, so yeah, I mean, definitely that's really the only time that I started worrying about myself. Cause of course you worry about your kids and your husband and your mom and, you know, everybody else. But I mean, it was during that time when I couldn't put one foot in front of the other that I was like, that's a problem.
Ah, wow. And so I think where my head goes at is that was kind of like the moment that you probably hit pause. And there's something that's interesting because, like, here's yet, Dana, I can't help but point this out. Another version of someone out there, like, that can relate to you because you were trying to get pregnant under the stress of your mom dying and a body that was ignored for quite a while. And it didn't just, like that was something that you had to put a little bit of, it sounds like, intention into getting pregnant. Like, am I right
Mhm.
to say that?
Yeah. And so after we weren't able to get pregnant for the first year, I do remember one doctor telling me that she actually asked me what was going on in my life. I mean, I had already been through like taking, you know, the medications and the Clomid and all that stuff. And so, but I remember one person asking me what was going on in my life. And my mom was on hospice care.
Mm,
And so now looking back, I'm like, really, Diana, you were trying to get pregnant, like while, because my dad and my brother were kind of running the business. And so I was the one, and I wanted to be the one to stay up with her all night and, you know, be the one to wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning. And my brother at this point had two small kids. And so, you know, he had his family. And so it was just me and Todd. We didn't have our girls when my mom was on hospice care, obviously, because I couldn't get pregnant. And so we were, I'm like, I was trying to get pregnant literally while my mom was dying. Like, why did nobody tell me that was a bad idea?
wow.
But
I like, that's just that. I'm speechless with that,
yeah. But I did have one doctor that asked me what was going on in my life. And I was like, well, my mom's really sick and she, you know, they only given her maybe a few months to live. But they still kept giving me the Clomid and they were running the tests and all the stuff. I mean, somebody should have been like, hey, Diana, this may not be the right time for you to get pregnant. But I was so desperate because I wanted her, and this is where I'm going to get through it without crying, but I wanted her to meet my kids. You know?
Mm, mm-hmm.
So I was like desperate to get pregnant. And the fact that I had been trying already for years
Mm-hmm.
while she was alive, it was just like this desperation for me to like have a baby so that I could like have a picture, you know, of my kids with her.
Oh man. I just have to like pause for like that version of you because that is like, that just sounds so hard. Like,
Yeah.
and what I think is so beautiful about that hard moment, like your desperation for that moment. And I'll try not to cry too, because I think it's so amazing though of you now being a gut girl, Diana. I can't put it into words, but how beautifully you also meet every person that we work with where they're at. How many times have people come to you and it's like, okay, we know that you want healing, but like you're able to look at their life and be like, maybe we can just support you, right? Like you're honest, like maybe we can just support. And how do we support you right now? Knowing that it's not the time for a transformation, but yet we still want to help you, right? So, like, it's so beautiful how your story and depth and pain really does meet who comes to us where they are, and recognizing like you are now the voice for them to say, let's just get you to a point where you can breathe, but know that like your transformation might come here because that's where you're going to be more successful. And there's a bigger priority right now for you to take care of. Like, this makes you so relatable to where people just are in their life and their desperation for healing. I think that is absolutely beautiful.
It's my journey is my journey, right? I mean, my story is my story. And I had a great life. I was blessed, I was blessed with parents that loved me and but looking back, it definitely was not picture perfect. And it was not anything like my friends. And like I was just saying earlier, that even my best friend is like, my gosh, like what else? It just kind of sometimes just feels like just one thing after another, just a lot of just hurt, I mean, definitely times of happy and, of course, but a lot of just stress, really stress, and not knowing how to handle that. And so, yeah, I mean, I do think that that's one of those things that make people able to come to me and talk to me. I mean, we're going to talk about this later, but, even choosing to have a breast reduction, just different, like lots of different things that I've been through and experienced and, been a caregiver and gone through sickness and death and, so many different things. It just, hopefully I try to be relatable, somebody that people can come to, they can trust. And yeah, just meet them where they are and help them understand that you're right. It may not be the right time, like for you to do this big thing that you want to do in your life or whatever. Like, let's take a moment and just pause. And that was something that I really never understood. I didn't know that I could share my emotions. I didn't know that I could learn how to manage my stress better,
Well, so that kind of, well, first I want to say thank you, honestly, for sharing all of this, because so many women, with you being so open and vulnerable with us, are going to, I mean, I have already seen, like I said, so many clients in your journey so far, and we're only in episode 2, but like, that's it, is that you are so willing to meet these clients in your own story because you're so vulnerable. So thank you. And then that's going to dive us into, I want to kind of leave off with, you mentioned like, I didn't know how to handle my stress, but now you do, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that you do to like the extent of it is perfect, but like our next episode is really going to kind of pick up to like your actual healing story. Like, we've led up so far to like understanding kind of your struggle, the symptoms, the red flags that nobody talked about. Like, we're kind of looking at it from a hindsight of like, look at all the and we're doing this because, guys, this is what we do in the Optimize Your Gut program with you. Like, no joke, this podcast is literally us almost like walking you through what it would be like to work with us. We literally want to know your whole story, because look at how much it tells about where this person is, right? Like, now that we know where all the red flags that no one pointed out, it's so easy to understand that you were so desperate after your kids that like something has to change. And now we see along the way, it didn't just happen overnight, did it, Diana? Like, this was years in the making of how your body got to where it was. And so then we're going to kind of end here, knowing that next episode, we're going to pick up with like your real healing story and like the steps that what you learned, the tools that you learned, how like some of your decisions changed from this version of you that we've discussed up until this point to working with me, and how it changed some of your decisions going forward, and what that healing journey looked like for you as you went through what we call now the Optimize Your Gut program. So man, so much more to come, guys. Stay tuned. This episode has been amazing. And we can't wait to jump into that next Diana's story part 2. So we will meet you guys there.
The information provided on this podcast, including all episodes, show notes, and related content, is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical advice and should not be used to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. The views expressed by the host and guests of the Gut Girls podcast are their own and do not reflect the official policy or position of Gut Girls LLC or any other affiliated organizations. While we are trained health professionals and certified health coaches, we are not acting in a licensed clinical capacity on this platform. Any recommendations made on this podcast, including those related to diet, supplements, lifestyle, and lab testing, are general wellness strategies intended for educational use. Always consult with your licensed healthcare provider before implementing any information heard here, especially if you have a medical condition, are taking prescription medications, or are under medical supervision. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to use this content as medical advice to treat yourself or others. Neither Gut Girls LLC nor the podcast hosts or any guests shall be held liable for any damage, loss, or injury caused by the use of this information.